Okay. Town of Groton Planning and Zoning Commission is called to order. Let's see, Hal? Here. Jeffrey?
Yeah.
Steve? Michael?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Lauren? Right, okay. And Clint, I guess is.
I don't see him yet.
Yes, okay. So we have a quorum. Members here, so. No public hearing tonight. No minutes. So at this time, is there any anyone from the public that would like to come up and say something? In communication about anything? Special permits, subdivisions, how about site plans? SIT 25-0006 Cube Smart Self-Storage Expansion 215 Gold Star Highway. Can you introduce yourself? Great, your address.
We'll promote it.
Kevin, are any of these other folks with you?
Yeah, trying to see if I do.
Okay, so you want me to promote myself?
So just. Yeah, just if there's any questions along here.
Yeah, nice. No, Mark's there. Oh, declined. It's just you. They don't want to join you.
Fair enough. Good evening. My name is Kevin Cisco, Senior Design Engineer with Bowler Engineering, 65 South Road, Hartford, Connecticut. Presenting a site plan application for an additional self-storage facility at an existing CubeSmart at 215 Gold Star Highway. The client is Rosewood Property Group, represented by Travis Cook, who's on the call. And the architect is SAA Architects, represented by Mark Russeter, who's also on the call. So the existing site is located at 215 Gold Star Highway. It's the existing CubeSmart development. Looking at this plan with the north arrow pointing to the top left of the page, the site is located at the corner of Winding Hollow Road and Gold Star Highway. It's within the commercial regional zone as well as the water resource protection overlay district. The existing development includes 7 existing self-storage facilities that all drain to the south of the site to an existing detention basin, which then outfalls into the existing wetlands in the wooded area in the rear of the site. There's one entrance to the site located in the northwest corner. And that is a full access drive that we intend on keeping and utilizing for our proposed development, which is located within that red line you can see there. It's roughly 1.1 acres. It's currently a vacant, undeveloped pad that seemed to have been leveled and cleared for development, but nothing has been put there since the self-storage was installed. The pad itself drains to the south of the site as well, to a low point that then trickles off-site to the U-Haul storage facility, which is located just to the west of the site. And then to kind of give you a picture, here's that vacant pad you're looking at. So there's a fire hydrant at the front of the site, and then the CubeSmart storage to the left of the pad. And then there's that kind of vacant level pad that sits roughly 8 to 10 feet higher than the existing parking lot. So the proposed development includes the addition of a 1-story climate controlled self-storage facility that is roughly 18,105 square feet. It's a permitted use within the commercial regional zone. And when analyzed as a whole site, the site itself still meets or exceeds the zoning requirements for building coverage, lot coverage, parking, and building setbacks. As mentioned earlier, the site intends on using the existing entrance there off of Gold Star Highway with a parking lot extended off of the access way with 7 parking spaces, 1 ADA van space with an ADA route to the building, and a loading area with a turnaround area. Site features include vehicular bollards along the building, as well as a retaining wall that separates the building from the bioretention basin in the rear. And that retaining wall at its highest point is roughly 10 feet tall. The lighting for the site are full cutoff fixtures that are dark sky compliant and minimize trespass over to the adjacent U-Haul property. We are in the WRPD Water Resource Protection District, so there's no storage or use of hazardous materials, no discharge of contaminated wastewater. The project's fully serviced by public water and sewer, and there's no use of sodium chloride on the parking lot or any disposal of snow containing sodium chloride. There's also no outdoor storage permitted on this site. Here's the interior of the building. So there's the 2 doors facing at the front of the building. This is kind of flipped from what we were just looking at. So the parking lot is actually on the top of the page here with the access way on the right side of the page. So there's 2 entry doors with storage units that range in size from 5 by 5 feet to 10 feet by 30 feet, and essentially around the entire perimeter. There's a utility room located in that bottom right corner, as well as an FDC connection that's been coordinated with the fire marshal. There's no proposed rooftop equipment on this building. There's 3 gray squares in the bottom right corner of the building, which are pads for condensing units. And the type of storage for this development is limited to debt storage use only, meaning the storage of furniture, files, or other unused, seldom used items for an indefinite period of time, as opposed to items that are more frequently circulated. No business activities such as those for a contractor are allowed in the lot, and as mentioned earlier, no hazardous materials are to be stored on site. With this being existing cleared and leveled pad, we set the finished floor of the building roughly the same elevation as that existing pad, and that's to maintain existing drainage patterns. So essentially, the access drive is sloped up pretty steep to get to the site, so all of that will maintain drainage down to the right of way, and then we're capturing and collecting everything within the parking lot, building, and landscaped areas, and that's all being directed to the existing low spot in the south of the site. And essentially, there's 2 drainage systems at play here. Being in that water resource district, infiltration is not allowed unless it's rooftop runoff exclusively. So what we've done is the entire rooftop of this proposed building is being collected and conveyed to the underground infiltration system, which is that 4-foot Coltech plastic chamber system that sits below the proposed parking lot there, that blue square. And that's been sized to infiltrate the required water quality volume, and the remaining runoff then goes through the outlet and down to the existing low point of the site. The proposed parking lot, landscaped area, retaining wall, that all is collected and conveyed to the bioretention basin. Similar to the Coltech system, it's been sized to treat the water quality volume, and so there's no infiltration there. That actually, the water quality volume infiltrates through the engineered bioretention media, which does the filtering, and then that's collected by an under drain and then outletted to the riprap apron you see there. And then those outlets have been sized for the 100-year storm. As far as utilities go, we've coordinated with Groton Utilities and Public Works for water, electric, and sewer. So for water, we're utilizing a connection to an existing water line on site. Just to the north of the fire hydrant there, which sits kind of the north corner of the building. For sanitary, we're connecting to an existing sanitary manhole. Electric, we're running to a existing above ground utility pole in the right of way. And then gas will have to be run to the Gold Star Highway gas main. So that's the only utility line that's crossing into the state route. So to sum up, we put together a site plan application for a 18,105 square foot self-storage facility that meets the town regulations. The proposed development utilizes the existing pad that has been cleared and leveled. Perhaps in anticipation for some extra development. The stormwater system has been designed to provide peak flow reductions as well as water quality control that complies with the stormwater quality manual and the Water Resource Protection District requirements. So thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Is it this time?
Sometime.
Okay.
All right, so Kevin was pretty thorough. I'm just gonna hit on some high level aspects again. Sites in commercial regional zone and the water resource protection area. Self-service storage facilities are conditional use in CR zone, and as Kevin went through each condition, this application meets them. This is the expansion on the same property of an existing self-service storage facility. Kevin mentioned 7 buildings. This would be the 8th. There's also that office apartment closer to Gold Star. That's what you're seeing, the house looking building there. This was previously the Nipa Hut. So where the building, where the building's being developed. So that explains what that pad was. What was it? Somewhere in 2003, it was demolished, I think, when I was looking at the aerials. There are wetlands to that south portion of the site, but it's been determined by the soil scientists that none of this disturbance falls within that upland review area, which is why there was no wetland application. The project complies with all WRPD requirements, as Kevin mentioned. The roof drains into the infiltration chamber. There are no utilities on the roof. Again, they're on the ground. They're ground mounted. And that bioretention basin has that impermeable liner as well. The applicant provided a copy of the CubeSmart lease and those documents, which reiterate that no hazardous materials would be stored on site. Let's see, as part of this application, so Deb and I went and checked out the site in that southern end where that detention basin is for the existing storage facilities. It looks a little rough, so we're asking that the applicant go in, check out that detention basin, as well as some of the retaining wall and winding hollow. The applicant's been very amenable to that. They're going to check that out, make sure it's still functioning. Any repairs that are needed will be taken care of. And yeah, so a lot of the comments, all of the comments from other staff have been addressed at this point. There's just a couple little tech items for the most part.
That's all. Okay, great. I guess I can open up to any questions. Sure, me. Well, Michael, you don't.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Now?
I got a couple of things. One, they're all little, but for how did this site escape having street trees along Gold Star? It seems like it's missing a few. Was there any reason? Do you know? Just nobody asked, nobody said anything. It sure looks like there's supposed to be 2 or 3 along Gold Star there. So that would be a provision that, but you already have the right kind of tree. You have 2 red maples, and it's called for, but I think it's every 50 feet or fraction. Therefore, it comes out to about 3 trees they would have somewhere behind your lot line.
You're talking along the Gold Star.
Yeah.
Over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty seat there.
Well, on the other side of their lot line it is, but up on top, all your neighbors did. So in fact, I wouldn't have even noticed it if all of the neighbors hadn't do it, including U-Haul. So if you could do it, please. Okay. So add it in there. Notice that there's a fence that you've got there that it's meant to be fencing in. Well, it's for the original areas. So you can keep that locked. But this is part of the same development, right? There's no office in here. This is just one thing. So what I was thinking of is that I'm calling you to maintain this landscaping, which is all grass or weedy grass is what it amounts to. And it actually squeezes down to about 5 feet at one point. So I don't know what kind of equipment you're getting in there. It seems like a large section of that fence should just go away and connect up to the building with a gate on it, which would serve you better, but would also allow you to service this. Otherwise, I would think it's going to be a mess in no time because you kind of can't get back there or up the hill or whatever.
You're talking about the strips, I mean, the existing fence, the parking lot, and the building there.
Yep, yep. I mean, I imagine it's already kind of a pain to mow it right up against the fence, and you have a mowing strip next to there. Between the mowing strip and the fence now is about 3 feet, so how about not have a fence at that location and just have it connect up with the building enough to protect what you need to protect, so. I think that would, and then if in fact you will need to service the retention pond occasionally, and right now there's kind of no way to do it. The grading is such on the west side, it just drops down too steeply. So the way to get to it would be from your existing parking lot up the hill. And therefore, you put a gate into your existing or just knock it back and put in a gate. Okay. And I think that's all. Well, just so I'm clear, you said you have a loading zone and a turnaround? Is there
Well, that
a?
loading, yeah, that area where there's no parking spaces, you've got about 32 feet to turn around a small U-Haul box truck.
Okay.
The grades don't really work with trying to create like a
Oh.
full circulation.
Oh, you can't go all the way around that. I saw that drops down too fast, but. I have no problem with the paving. If I was in a box truck, I'd be backing back out into the driveway. It's,
Sure.
I don't know how many times I need to back up and go. Good luck with that. Yeah, my Subaru could make the turn, but not the box truck. All right, that's all I got.
Hey, Jeffrey?
Are there any emergency exits from this building? Or do you just have the two entrance doors?
Just the two on the front of the building right now.
So if there's a problem or people have to leave the building quickly, they can't? Is fire marshal have no problem with it?
The fire marshal has given all comments to Kevin and I sent him the revised copies and he didn't have any further comments. He did mention, I believe, that there would be a discussion about another means of egress if need be. But that was left to be decided at the construction,
Who decides that?
the fire marshal.
So if he hasn't, he doesn't make that decision.
Building permit application. It doesn't do it itself.
Oh, okay.
But this has been a back and forth conversation
Hmm.
about that egress.
So it probably will have
Mhm.
something. Yeah, because it just seems odd to have such a large structure with only.
Yeah.
One side you can enter and exit.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the prohibited use of sodium chloride, how does that get identified to people 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road?
So the
Is that-
client actually fills out a memorandum of understanding form with Groton Utilities, which is kind of like an agreement for them. to
Yes.
Maintain the site and agree to.
But how does somebody 5 years from now, when everybody is left that's here tonight, would be aware of that? Does it go in your preventive maintenance manual?
Yeah, we have another and it incorporates the MOU form that the client has to fill out. With these other columns.
Yeah, but that's once.
Sure, but I just, in that form. Groton Utilities checks, water quality from, I forget what the number of years are, and if the levels of contaminants are at a certain level above what's allowed, they're allowed to step in and make whatever adjustments need to be to the challenge.
This is something that Groton Utilities is working more and more on via these MOUs, right? I believe Dave, your Gold Star project had the same situation where Groton Utilities is trying to ensure that these developments are continuing
Yeah, that's.
to do,
gotta be
to do what they're,
means.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But
yeah.
they assume that responsibility, then.
They do,
They-
they do, right, the owner will allow them to come on the property as necessary to remedy, issues that find.
So they take on the responsibility of enforcement there, okay? That's all I had.
Steve?
Is this considered a manned space?
Man space,
You're gonna have people working there all the time it's open?
I can't answer that, but I'm assuming the office building has someone in there that's manual, so I don't
Okay.
know how the Q Smart operates.
Yeah, some of them are
Yeah.
completely, you can go in and out anytime and nobody needs to be there. I was just curious.
Yeah.
It's not a thing. And then can you explain, I know that there's an existing entrance for the facility.
Sure.
And then just explain to me the traffic flow for the old one versus the new one.
So right now, to get to these sites, you're still coming up this road and around through here.
Yeah.
And then there's a gate there, you probably go out, check in, I think, at the office. So now we're just putting a little freeway intersection, I guess, here for someone wants to park here.
So is there another gate there? Is this considered like a whole nother business?
No, it's still, I think this is still the Q Smart, all same business. There's currently no gate or fence. Like how this site's completely gated off. I'm not sure if there's plans to gate this one off or not.
Okay. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
curious what traffic and everything. So everything's going out the same curb cut it always went out.
Yeah.
All
We're
right.
just putting 7 parking spaces off the.
Yeah.
existing in that building area.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I had.
Kevin?
Yeah, so I looked through the plan documents, I didn't see pictures of this from the outside in comparison to the existing buildings. Did you have anything in here
An
about
elevation plan?
a little bit of elevation, but actually just the look of the building?
Yeah.
Were the elevations not included in the
I
package?
didn't know it was
The
there.
elevation isn't,
Oh, you're just looking for the perspective.
Oh, compared to.
Like a rendering?
yeah, you're drawing a rendering of this versus the other building. I like that.
It's gonna sit higher,
Yeah, no, we don't have that.
but it's gonna sit higher than the existing storage facility.
Because the hill goes.
And then U-Haul, I believe, is even higher. Yeah.
Terraces up.
Yep.
Yeah,
almost
it's way higher.
rise, And they all slowed down to that. You're there.
So the second question, as I saw the elevation issues and stuff, do you have any rendering of how that looks either from the parking lot or from the retention area?
I'll look, so like down looking out bad.
Yes,
I don't think we prepared any renderings.
okay.
Perspective.
So as that elevation goes up, and gets to the ground level, how actually tall is that, at that point?
Yeah, so the bottom of that basin is about 20 feet below the finished floor.
Yeah.
And so that grades going up at a 3-to-1 slope to the bottom of the retaining wall. Retaining wall is about 5 to 10 feet. And then you're sloping up again to the face of the wall, so it's kind of also terrace up to that, to make up that 20 feet. It was either that or remove the wall, grade out further, but then you start pushing it, start something like that out.
They would have started encroaching in that upland review area if they'd gone any further that way. The closest approximation to, I think, what you were looking for probably was in the wetland report.
Yeah.
Where there's a photo looking kind of down up to the site, but it's not exactly what you're looking for.
And just one question, because I don't know if I saw, but is there any ledge in there at all?
Yeah, there's ledge in the front of the site, underneath the existing drive aisle. So where we located that underground system, we actually shifted after our original submission to get out of that ledge area.
Okay. But no glass in there.
Ideally, no. The plan is no.
And
Okay.
I did take a snippet of the geotech report. They did have a geotech report completed for this site. And it was, there's boulders, there's rocks, basically try to avoid them.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna do.
Thank you.
Okay. Lauren? Okay, great. I don't have any questions either this time. Anybody else? All right, so got a draft motion here. Have you seen the draft motion?
Yes.
Okay, you're okay with it?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Anyone?
Thank you.
I'll just get some house numbers.
Thank you.
Okay, so make a motion to approve site plan SIT 25-0006 for Cube Smarts self-storage expansion 215 Gold Star Highway with the following modifications. 1, any modification to this plan imposed by another federal, state, or local agency shall require additional review by town staff or the commission, whichever is appropriate. 2, the design engineer shall certify the stormwater management system and associated improvements have been installed per the approved plan prior to the issuance of the certificate of site plan compliance. 3, the design engineer shall certify that the existing stormwater basin and retaining walls on site are functioning properly and all appropriate maintenance and or repairs are completed prior to the issuance of the certificate of site plan compliance. And 4, technical items as raised by staff shall be addressed. Do I hear a second?
Second.
There's a question?
No question, so are we okay with having the trees and the fence as technical items?
Yep.
And what this is?
Anything else? Any other questions?
I think so.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstaining, okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next we'll have site plan CSP 25-0003 Sherman Residence, 504 Noe Road. Please introduce yourself. You know who you are.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Greg Fettis with Fettis Engineering, professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut, an office at 70 Essex Street in Mystic, Connecticut. Here representing the Shermans, 504 Noank Road. It's a site that's 50-something thousand square feet with a shared driveway off of Noank Road. Big outcropping of ledge. There's some inland wetlands, some tidal wetlands, a view easement, and some coastal hazard areas, flood zone. So a lot going on. But we did receive wetland approval last month for the house that's before you. Meets all the zoning requirements for side yards and rear yards and coverage and height. Kind of way under on coverage, which I think is one of the interesting things. 8.3% where 30% is allowed, even though it's kind of a good sized house. But anyway, you can see the outcropping of ledge. We're not touching that. There is one large tree that's coming out of that needs to come down just because of a safety. And that's shown just located. This would just be to the north of that ledge. The driveway you can see comes off of Noah. That's all in already. And our shared driveway is entering, basically, right in this location, at the bend. And we come into a 2-car garage with a turnaround. Wetlands, we show the disturbed area, the upland review area, this hatched area, which they asked us to provide a native plant kind of to replace what we disturbed in that upland review area with native plants along the I guess it would be the northwest side, northwest corner of the property. It's public water, public sewer, underground electric. We do have for the roof leaders, we do have an underground infiltration system, which will take care of the first 1.3 inches of rain, stormwater. And that view easement is basically from my scale towards the railroad tracks. All of that is view easement for the houses that are located over here. So nothing can be, there's very strict, nothing higher than, I forget, was 6 feet or something, 4 feet or 6 feet. So erosion control, silt fence details on there, basically silt fence down gradient for most of the site, which starts over by the existing common drive and then runs around the grading area back all the way around back to the driveway. So basically surrounding the house. It's a stockpile area. We were asked to keep that out of the review area, so we had moved it over into this location. Actually, we show a couple different spots up in a little blow up of the erosion soil control plan. Anti-tracking pad coming off of the gravel drive. Drainage calcs are on there. And we know we need to do elevation certs for the house prior to construction and then when construction is complete. And I did see the motion. We're okay with that. I mentioned the elevation certs, technical items, and any further other reviews by other agencies that might affect what we're presenting tonight. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
All right, so thank you. Again, this site's located within the coastal area management plan. It is also within 100 feet of a coastal feature. In this case, it's a tidal wetland. So both of those require the camera view for this. This is actually the last undeveloped lot within the East Farm subdivision. That subdivision was approved back in 2005. Just to the west of that is the open space that was part of that subdivision. Yes, it is a complicated site. So you have 3 flood zones. You have the VE zone, the AE zone, and the X zone there, as well as 2 types of wetlands, both inland wetlands and tidal wetlands. Yes, an elevation certificate will be required as part of this. This is just what we do for all of these projects, especially within the VE and AE zones. As was mentioned, there was a wetland approval last month in May. And as part of that, which is shown on the plan there, 1,400 square feet of native vegetation will be replanted for the area that's been disturbed in the upland review area. Adjacent to that is also an area along the western property where is going to be a no-mow area as well to help protect the woods. Talked a little bit about ENS. Staff will inspect the ENS prior to any site disturbance. And there are no known or foreseeable adverse impacts to the existing coastal feature.
Thanks. Okay, let's go in order again. Michael.
Yeah, nothing.
Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, Al?
No questions.
Okay, Jeff.
Yeah, How are the normal areas and the replanting enforcement, how is that done? For future, like people down
Yeah, so
a decade from now, know that they can't mow it down. or
So
something.
basically, it was part of the condition for the wetlands permit, so it'll actually be filed. So as with any wetland permit, it needs to be filed at the clerk's office as part of that. So any review that would be done ahead of this for a survey or whatnot would
Do you
pop
need
that
to
up.
put signage up or anything on the property?
They did not, the wetland agency did not request any signage there. But they, you know, as part of the final of this, we'll check to go see that area is being, it's being planted and whatnot.
Yeah, right now, but
Yep.
how is it maintained? I get concerned over that new people will buy the property in 10 years. And how will the new property owners be aware of it?
Yeah, that's,
Well,
yeah,
do you
they would
think
do a
they
title
just
search as
eliminate
part
it?
of, buying the property and it would pop up from that. Yeah,
I think it will.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sure
it-
that's the case.
That's how, I
That's the
assume
way-
that's all we
Yep.
know.
Yep.
Shaky. What about hazardous materials in a house? Is there any restrictions on the AEs?
no, not that, no.
Hmm?
No, there's no
No, you don't have
restrictions
to
there.
put the house up in violation.
No, not, it's being
Because
located
it's
out,
the AE.
it's being located outside of that, so they do not have to elevate it. And based upon the elevations, obviously, this is just showing the, and maybe you can talk a little bit about the elevation piece of it. Obviously, we don't have what the structure is gonna look like, but, it's being placed back and I think there is a.
It's an AE zone.
It is, and there's a first floor, there is a first floor height in there that's as part of this.
That's what.
In the
I
AE,
mean, what is the AE zone?
so this is a coastal AE zone, all right? So a
Okay.
coastal AE zone means that during a 1% chance storm, so what has historically been known as a 100-year storm, means that you can get between 1.5 and 3 foot waves in that area there.
The house has to be able to withstand.
The house has to be built above, basically the first floor is above the AE, the BFE +1. From at least
Yeah,
what's shown on there,
yes.
you know,
But I think, I don't believe we're in the Limois, which is the 1.5 to 3 foot wave action,
that is in the Limois.
the houses.
Yes, yep.
Oh, okay. Then that's my mistake. Okay.
Is that something on the plan?
It does show it on, which part? What part are you asking?
The part that he didn't seem to
The
understand.
Limois, so it shows the AE zone. It does show the
Yeah,
AE zone.
zones.
Yep.
That Limois,
So Limois is a limited wave action. So there's a difference between the coastal AE zone as well as an inland, or like more of a, like, I think about like downtown Mystic a little further up. That's more of a kind of just a straight AE zone. So the wave heights are smaller in the regular AE zone versus the
Mhm.
coastal AE zone.
we could get
So this gets,
actual wave.
gets picked up on the building permit.
Yes,
Process.
absolutely,
That's how that gets
Yep.
controlled.
absolutely. So they have to show those full elevations and whatnot and the height. And that's why, like, as was mentioned before, and we're gonna talk about this in a little bit too. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about flood regulations and where we are now and stuff. So is requiring basically two elevation certificates. So one prior to the first floor being built to make sure it's at the correct height, and then a final elevation certificate as part of this. But that would get picked up with the building permit.
That like an as-built.
Yeah, it's think about it like as an as-built. Yeah, but this basically shows what the heights of the floors are and whatnot,
But it's an official FEMA document.
Yep.
the Elevation certificate.
and required
So
of the town to do that.
I guess that's really what we're approving tonight is with the CAM requires it.
In this case, yes,
That's-
yes, what would be
that's
requiring
really
to,
what-
yep, exactly. And we're putting in there just so it's very, very clear to the applicant that they're required to do an elevation certificate as
Yeah.
part of the approval.
No, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's why we would say that the CAM can be approved.
Yes.
Anything else?
No.
Steve?
Just a quick question, the GF ground floor and FF first floor? Why are they only 1 foot apart? Am I reading that right?
It's GF is the garage. elevation. So you pull in at the garage elevation and then there's 2 steps up to the finished floor. So the garage can be below BFE.
That's all I
just-
got.
Good, thank you.
All right. Kevin?
Sure, David, if I could just have clarification.
Sure.
So the 1% storm.
Yep.
Is tidal, but I don't understand the wave side of after the 1% storm.
So each of the zones is based upon a certain wave height. All right. So anything within the VE zone, the velocity zone. So think of Groton Long Point, right? That's all within the velocity zone. There are waves that are 3 feet or higher. The coastal AE zone are waves 1.5 to 3 feet. The regular AE zone are waves less than 1.5 feet. And then the X zone, they wouldn't be impacted by that.
BB Cove is in the 1 to 3 foot.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have the map in front of me, but yeah, I could.
I guess I'm in BB Cove a lot, I never seen it. So-
Well, and this is based upon,
No, I get.
Oh,
storm, I
yeah.
get the Title,
Yeah.
title right, I understand the whole digital codes, I just don't understand. So at the top of that 1% storm, then there's a 3 foot. It's expected potentially 1 to 3 foot, or part of that 1%.
You want me to?
yeah,
I can try here. It's a little complicated, but it's like a base flood. In this case is elevation 10. It doesn't mean that the water all comes up to elevation 10. There's a standing water height that's somewhere below 10. I don't know the exact number, but say it's 8. And then within that, there's wave action on top of 8. So in theory, it doesn't go above 10,
Right.
but the standing water flood levels are less than the actual BFE. So like I think a couple of the storms, Sandy or Irene,
Yeah.
downtown Mystic. I think some of that's in, like going from memory, like at Central Hall was AE 11, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's on the river. This is protected back behind the railroad tracks, so it's not as.
Sure. And that where I
so-
saw this, so I don't see that behind the railroad tracks. And so
Right.
Okay.
What's the elevation of the railroad track?
I don't have it, but it's probably upwards of, I want to say 11-ish, somewhere around there.
Take
You
a
go
look at the
down to-
wave action.
You can go down to Little Point and there's a thermometer thing right
Yeah.
at School Street,
Scary.
and it
That's-
shows
yeah.
where it is.
Yeah, the tracks
But-
come down and that's probably one of the lower points.
Yes, it was
But if
probably-
BB Cove, it's up, I think it's in the 8 to 9 foot. That's just a- Well, thank you.
I would agree.
Now I get it. So, thank
There you
you.
go. Yeah. Okay.
Can I just ask one?
Oh, yeah.
When the AE zones, those 2 different types, that's gonna be dealt with building code.
Yes,
right?
yeah,
That's like
absolutely.
Scouring. or
Yeah,
something
that's
else.
we just have to
Yeah,
note it
no,
as part of our flood protection regulations.
Yeah,
So
no, I get it. Okay, good. Perfect, thank you.
I just have one question. You've got quite a big expanse, 1,400 square feet for native vegetation. I'm just curious how it's gonna work, because when you get, of course, in the coastal areas, the vegetation is very different. Back to this site, may have 6 or 7 different micro habitats or something, but how is someone going to plan that? Or, I mean, this isn't like your normal, they'll put a spruce here or something like that.
Right, so I was going to get a soil scientist to help out with the plant selection. And then get that to staff, and staff was then gonna look at what we chose and if that was okay. We kind of inherited, I can't remember even who did was it Snarsky maybe did it originally? So sometimes he's available, sometimes he's not these days. I'd probably have him back because he's familiar with the site. And he's also, kind of an expert on coastal plants. There's a couple other ones that if we can't get him, we'll get somebody, and staff will be saying okay or no.
Was there ever an inventory done?
There was not. Most of the site is actually mowed like a lawn.
It's currently mowed right now.
Yeah, it's like a lawn now, so we're getting some of our lawn taken away with these plantings and then a whole nother section of non-mow. So we have to, which I'm sure will get disturbed during, but then we'll replant it with some kind of no mow grass. Artificial turf.
Like a wetland seed.
Oh my.
That's.
It's very complicated, I know, so, okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so any other questions? Concerns? Okay.
Anyone need a copy of the motion? As is?
You know, get English one? This one matters.
Motion, I'll make a motion to approve coastal site plan application CSP 250003, Sherman Residence, 504 Noank Road, with the following conditions. A final elevation certificate shall be prepared and submitted to the Office of Planning and Development Services. 2, any modifications to this plan imposed by another federal, state, or local agency shall require additional review by town staff or the commission, whichever is appropriate. And 3, technical items as raised by staff shall be addressed. Findings: the commission hereby finds that the application as modified is consistent with all applicable goals and policies of CGS 22A-92 and incorporates all reasonable measures which would mitigate adverse impacts of the proposed activity on coastal resources.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
discussion. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed, or abstained? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we're on to no old business. I guess. So we just have new business? Any new applications? Okay. Now, what we're all waiting for, the flood regulation.
So this is Dave's, just so you're aware, he's a certified floodplain manager, so he has a real depth of knowledge about the flood regulations and flood impacts. This is his project.
Yeah, one question.
Sure.
Yeah, I had a question because when I saw your designation.
Yeah.
Right,
That's it.
yeah,
What does it mean?
yeah, what's it mean?
All right. So it is it's through the Association of State Floodplain Managers. There is a test you have to take. There's actually a course that I went through and whatnot. So so I took that. I think I've been a certified floodplain manager for I think going on 12 years now. And before I was using it for a nonprofit. Now I'm actually using it for a town as basically as the floodplain manager. So and we'll talk a little bit about the history of why we're really looking into these regs and stuff as well. But yeah, so I have to, as part of that, I have similar to you all, I have I need to take class. Get credits every 2 years. I need 16 credits. Usually I crush that and do like 3 times as much, just because. Oh no, just because it's to me it's very interesting, So and so yeah.
This is like a new program that was started. Sorry, I'm not gonna ask.
No. I'll tell you all about it. It's not a new program. This is the first time anyone on staff. Yeah. So, and I even during my interview, I was asking questions. I'm like, "How'd you guys do this?" "Oh, we don't. We will. I'm not sure." I'm like, "Oh, well, I am. This is what I have as my certification." So I've really been getting involved, and we'll talk more about working with the building department on all these, like very much like the questions you were asking and stuff, and in terms of design and whatnot. So, if you want me to start, I can kind of go through that.
Yeah, that's great. I think, I was looking at the map with all the different zones and stuff like that of town, and that's, yeah.
And there's a lot going to change. Yeah. So that's
Yeah, that designation.
that's the other piece too. So the last time the town of Groton's flood protection regulation that were updated was in 2019. And obviously we all use these regulations almost daily on the projects that we look at, and obviously have to make sure that we're following those regulations and whatnot. And as we're going through that, we're finding like, oh, there's a hole here. There's not a definition for this. Oh, this doesn't match up with another section. So over the years, we've kind of kept track of those, and we're at the point now, and I'll tell you exactly the reason why we're at the point now, to bring these forward. So last fall, FEMA conducted a community assistance visit with the town. The last time they had done that was about 10 years prior to that. And what that means is they basically, they give us a little bit of time to prep, which is good because they want a lot of documentation. But basically they want to for us to basically pull any development within the flood zone. Building files, planning files, any variances, anything like that, all within the flood zone. So really, in this case, it's really focusing on the VE and the AE zone, both the coastal AE and the regular AE zone, and other A zones, but not the X zone, which is the X zone is what has historically been known as the 500-year storm. But what FEMA's trying to get us to do, call it more as the 0.2%. So anyway, so we've been looking to really strengthen and clarify those floodplain regs, especially after that visit. We had a good visit. We actually have some really good regulations, but we had already identified prior to that some areas where we can improve upon, especially definitions and some other stuff, which we'll kind of start talking about a little bit. Let's see here. So currently, we are contracting with Horsley Witten to work on helping to review and update the floodplain regs along with staff. And I'll just go through a few kind of thoughts that we have, and you may have more, but I'll just kind of talk to you. So I wanted to include not only the definitions, you'll see the section on fill, because that's actually kind of a big one we want to talk about, as well as the floodplain regs. And what I highlighted in as part of the agenda packet were some of the different topics that we'd like to at least have a discussion about. So I can go through and talk about those quickly, and then we can all talk about that, and if you have any other thoughts or whatnot. Clearly, I don't have to tell you, in the last several years, especially the last couple winters, we've had a lot of big coastal storms that have really had an impact on where we've seen it most down in places like Willow Point and downtown Mystic and whatnot. So this is, first and foremost, in front of a lot of people's eyes and whatnot. We do have, as you know, we have the sustainability and resilience division of our department that's helping to work with that and on some of the floodplain stuff. So there's a lot of overlap here. In terms of definition, so you saw correctly in the motion that we're trying to put in elevation certificates to make it very clear to the applicants that these are required, and not just be like, oh, I didn't know I needed that. We've been a lot more upfront with the clients that we work with and the engineering firms to make sure they know that. Funny thing is, there's no definition for an elevation certificate anywhere. So that's one of the things we want to add in there. Another one is kind of talking about these storms. So FEMA is real, and we won't get into the status of FEMA right now, but just know that even since we had the community assistance visit back fall, we've had 2 additional meetings. So we meet with them, with not only FEMA, but also the state floodplain coordinator at Connecticut Deep quarterly. So we talk a lot about where we are on projects and whatnot. So there's been a big push to get away from the 100-year storm and the 500-year storm, because a lot of people say, well, it's not 100 years, so we're fine. Whereas the case is that a 100-year storm, or what has historically been known as a 100-year storm, means that in any given year, there's a 1% chance of getting that 1% storm, which I think most of you know. So you can get 3 100-year storms back to back to back. The storm that we had last fall in Western Connecticut, that was close to a 1,000-year storm. So they don't even have a definition for that. And again, the 500-year storm that they've used historically is also the 0.2% annual chance storm. So we would like to change it around so it's more clear that, and use that language instead.
Can't you refer to who determines what this is, like FEMA? That's, I think, rather than saying it's a 1% chance, it really isn't. It's FEMA. It's FEMA. You'd have to go to their table to say this is what it is.
No, I understand that, but
So it should reflect that.
So-
It says as defined by FEMA
Yeah.
or something.
Of course, and we will like as part of the draft stuff that we've done, we're going back and actually referencing FEMA documentation and their language and stuff. We're not trying to create anything. We're trying to use what's already
No,
out there.
but it should refer to
Yep,
where that definition.
absolutely, and we'll have
comes
that.
from.
Yep.
Because with climate change, that you may have to update their tables or whatever they do to whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
To say a 100 or a 1% chance.
Yep.
It's really based on historic data.
Yes,
But you may want to
and that
change that or
All the time.
so you have
Yep.
with time.
Yep.
Or you want to put some extra, 10%
and there.
into it or something.
I don't know where things are going to go right now because things are at a kind of
Oh, but just where the source is.
right. No, absolutely, and we will have all that reference.
Yeah,
Yep.
rather than using this 1%
Yeah.
chance. of-
Yep.
Or 100, what's 100-year storm?
Right.
It really isn't, it's a percent.
Yeah.
It's a
like the
percent,
way-
right?
I like the way you said it the other way. You could have
Yeah.
3 of these in 1 year,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you know.
is there not?
So you would think that if you had 3 of them 1 year, then the next year, that percentage.
That should.
Change, yeah, you would think.
Big target, you know?
That was my question. Did you really add all these up? Because we did have a 500-year storm. Here. We did have what, a 100-year storm?
Yep.
If you really put these on a scatter chart or something like that, what would it look like? Does it look like we really have, a lot of 100 on average? I know averages aren't good in this case, but.
And part of it, and you're exactly right, Jeff. I mean, like these do not take into account sea level rise or anything. It's all based upon history. So FEMA was trying to move towards looking towards the future, right?
Yeah.
And so we just they've basically been approved by us. We reviewed the inland FEMA maps, the new FEMA maps for Groton a year plus ago. And again, we were supposed to have them by now and be able to implement them as part of our regs and stuff and get new flood maps. I don't know where that stands. We are also supposed to get brand new coastal flood maps, which are actually the more important ones in my perspective, because that's where we're seeing a lot of these major storms that are having some really big impacts. I mean, just from the winter storms alone, we're seeing a lot more flooding. So significant flooding.
Yeah,
Is it
that's right.
GIS? Does that have like updated? Because I was looking at that today. And those really,
Those are based upon the last maps, which were 2013.
Nothing is live out there on the web somewhere.
No, it's all based on history. So we're really trying to look as proactive as possible, knowing that things are changing, seeing the changes that are happening here at the local level, and towns have like a minimum that they're supposed to do that are within the coastal zone or in the flood zone. We're looking to go beyond that because the biggest thing is to protect the community and to help to protect the homeowner. It's not to make things harder for them, it's to protect them because things are getting more challenging. And we'll get into some of those things too in terms of those as we get a little bit further.
on the zoning commission, I think we talked about, should we do 1 foot more, 2 feet? Are people still talking about only up to 2 feet, or has that number gone up?
Great question, and that is actually my very next one. So prior, we did, that was good. So prior to the change in administration, there was, and I won't get into the acronym because we all talk about way too many acronyms. Long story short, it's gone. And what FEMA was pushing towards was more protection, specifically for any federally funded project. So for critical infrastructure, and that's actually a definition which we don't have, like critical infrastructure, critical systems, we want to add that to our flood regs because that's a big part of it. The new regulations, so if you were applying for, say, HUD funding for a elderly housing in the flood zone, which was looking to happen, because they're basically considered critical facilities, the new requirement was going to be base flood elevation +3 to protect that. Same thing it was going to look at hospitals, police stations, fire, emergency shelters, all of that. They were looking for any new structures to be built at a higher standard. Yeah, there was stuff that, yep, yep. So that was all stuff coming down because there was a lot of federal funding and and FEMA said, hey, listen, we've seen all these storms happen nationwide and we see that all this stuff that it was built to the correct height is still getting flooded. So we need to allow for some more protection. And that gives a little bit of cushion from the question with sea level rise and whatnot. And the other thing is it was basically FFRMS. Like I said, it's like a federal flood. It was a new standard they were going to do. It also had basically almost like a sea level rise overlay. So instead of just looking at a static map that says, okay, here are the FEMA maps, this was the flood, this is the flood zone from historic data from 2013 and way before that, this was actually adding a buffer on that based upon that you would have to build to that standard. So you couldn't just build to whatever base flood elevation was that. So there was that. So that has disappeared as a requirement from the feds right now. It completely disappeared. They got rid of it. It was one of the first things they got rid of. Now, that's not to say that as a town and as a planning and zoning commission, that we might want to consider allowing for more protection for our critical infrastructure. So, so things like, pump stations, again, hospitals, not that we have any, police stations, any of those, elderly and whatnot, to allow for more protection, to think more forward thinking. So there's one opportunity there. The other piece of that too is that right now our regs basically say that you're in the flood zone, you have to build to elevation BFE +1. Well, what if a homeowner wants to be more proactive and go higher? And there's actually, FEMA has I have to find it, but, and when we're going to be going over this for a while, so I can bring some more information. FEMA has a great little diagram that looks at flood insurance. And it looks at base flood elevation +1, or even let's say below base flood elevation, the cost would be base flood elevation +1, +2, +3. As you go higher, you're obviously adding more protection. You're increasing the cost, but it's not an exponential cost. You're providing a lot. So if you're already going to have to build to, say you're in the, I don't know, let's say you're in the AE 11 zone. So your first floor elevation would actually, if it's coastal, it would have to be the bottom plank. There's a lot of definitions to that. So let's say you have to build to 12 feet, right? If you're already having to build to that height, to add another foot or 2 feet on that is not much money, but it's a huge amount of savings from the flood insurance side of things. Now, of course, you're not required to have flood insurance. Some people own their house straight out and they may say, hey, my house gets destroyed, I have enough money in the bank that I'm just going to build it back. Not everyone's like that. A lot of the communities in areas, Midway Oval is a great example. Most of them are in the X zone, but also the AE zone. And so if those coastal FEMA floodplain maps come in, it may show places like Midway Oval may be more in the AE zone. So and that does a lot. And we're going to get to the next part, which is basically substantial improvement. So anyways, as part of that, in our regs right now, so if your structure or your property is substantially damaged, or you would like to substantially improve it, which means that either the replacement for the damaged part of the structure, or you want to build a new garage and a shed, or not a shed, a garage and a room above it and whatnot. If that number hits 50% of the cost of the structure, not the property. A lot of people say, well, my property is worth, $1 million. And it's like, no, your property is worth $600,000. Your house is worth 400. So if they hit that $200,000 mark, that means that even though they may be below base flood elevation, that improvement has to be built to the higher flood standards, which means in a lot of cases, now you have to elevate it. And so there's a lot that plays into that. Currently, right now in our regs, we have what's called a 1-year look back. All right. So that means that and it's not exactly clear in here. We've kind of gone back and forth about when that 1 year starts and whatnot. But we'd like to clarify that a little bit more. And actually, we'd like to increase that from a 1-year look back. Would like to discuss increasing it from a 1-year look back to 2 years, 3 years, maybe something like to figure, because ultimately anyone that has a home or a business within the flood zone, again, we're trying to protect the community. We're trying to protect their investment. And if we're just doing patchwork here and there and never getting more resilient, making structures more resilient, are we really protecting the community? And that's part of the challenge. So this will be another discussion in terms of that.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
The look back is for what? The value of the property?
Yeah. So let me give an example. Again, let's use a $400,000 home, right? You would like to do. Yeah, I know, and especially the cost of what things are now. You want to do $250,000 worth of work. So that would trigger you to bring your home into compliance with the flood regulations. So now you have to elevate your home. So there's a much bigger cost for that. So how the substantial improvement part works now with that look back, you can say, okay, I'm going to do $150,000 of work. I'm going to get a permit for that. And then I'm going to come back in a year and I'm going to finish it off with the extra 100,000. Again, are they more protected? That's a question. There's a big balance between, trying to protect them from impending storms and the flooding that we're seeing, and as well as, wanting to do improvements on their property. So this is going to be a question,
But the look back aggregates all those numbers.
it would, yeah. So if you were to increase that look back, let's just say we go 2 years,
Yeah.
right? And first year you put 150,000 into it, the second year you put 100,000, right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, you'd be fine. Now it would trigger you having to put your house into compliance or business or whatever that may be. And, and there's, go ahead. Yeah.
On the off chance the person says, screw it, I don't care. You can't get insurance, you wouldn't be able to get insurance, or they would charge you an astronomical amount.
You would have a much harder. So how flood insurance works right now is if you have a federally backed mortgage, you are required.
Federally backed mortgage.
Yep,
Okay.
we are required by
Gotta
the
be
bank.
Fannie Mae.
Yep,
Gotta
yep,
be a fan of it. All right.
yep. You are required to get federal flood insurance. And depending upon where your first floor height is and which flood zone you're in, will determine what that is. If you're elevated already, you're going to pay a much lower premium. If you've had, past, claims and stuff like that, that plays into it too. So
But our friends in Groton Long Point or something, and they want to put in on their $1 million house, they want to put in a $500,000 addition. And completely. They can do it because they don't have a mortgage.
yep.
But-
That's insurance wise, right? And from zoning, we don't deal with their zoning.
Okay.
So we,
Here's
obviously,
bullet point.
Say it was Mount Silent.
okay, yeah, or Mouse Island, yes, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Good, because we did talk about that in Mouse Island, so like if, and they were talking about if a major storm comes and destroys their home, those properties there, if I don't know if you looked on GIS and you looked at what the tax assessment, they don't have a huge ticket item. So really doing almost anything there could trigger a substantial improvement and having to bring it into compliance. So if they get wiped out, then obviously you're starting from scratch and whatnot. So say Willow Point or downtown Mystic, either of those, like this, and again, this is a big conversation. This is not just like there's other communities have tried to dabble with this, some with a lot of success, some with more challenges. So we're not trying to discourage development, but we're also trying to protect those that are in the flood zone from causing more damage to their neighbor, to the community and whatnot. And plus everything that goes along with it, all the infrastructure that has to go along, like there's a lot of stuff that comes along with this. So this is going to be a big topic of
Yeah,
conversation.
so just to rephrase, I didn't mean to say Groton Long Point.
Yeah, no,
But say downtown Mystic.
Yep.
All right, so within our zoning purview, what happens if the person says you won't give them a building permit? Is that the
If they're
Is that
gonna,
the-
so yes.
what we're going
let's-
for?
Yeah, this is, so how it works right now, and
Look at the zoning permit, and you need the zoning permit before you get the building.
exactly, so,
Okay.
so,
we
and
will stop the production of any improvement
not any, no, not at all.
if it
If
doesn't
it hits
satisfy the new criteria.
50%, right,
If it doesn't
exactly.
Satisfy the new.
And so how it works now, so when we work with the building department, right? So how FEMA, and again, because we did our community assistance visit, we've had several meetings with them. if you are somewhere between, say, 35 to 45% of the cost of the structure, what FEMA advises and what we've been doing with applicants saying, or contractors or whoever they are saying, okay, you're starting to get closer to that 50%. We need a full breakdown of the improvements you want to do to that structure, because if you can't just say, oh, sorry, I went over them at 55%, because then we're out of compliance and the town can get potentially kicked out of the federal flood insurance program. So we have to watch this very, very carefully. And that's, so it's just, like I said, this is challenging. Like, we're not trying to discourage that. We're trying to really protect the community and protect the business, the homeowner, whatever that is, for if they live within the flood zone.
Technical, I just thought of, like, for downtown Mystic, that ideally we just need to lift the whole thing up 8 feet, but we're not we do that. But is there some provision someplace, or does it need to be invented, where the way we already think of garages? You put the garage on the floodplain because just move your car, or if your car gets swamped, oh well, everything still stands there. For apartments, you don't want it to happen, but for a store, you could have a very different insurance arrangement or whatnot for the store.
Yes.
Let the store wash out the back window.
Absolutely.
That was Central Hall, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let that all wash right
Yeah.
through. And is that
Under
allowed?
provision.
That's kind of what they're moving towards, because
Okay.
the real thing is to protect people, right? So
right.
FEMA is trying to protect
Not the
people,
stuff.
not the stuff. The stuff is replaceable, no
Right.
matter what it is, but it's the people piece. And so, yeah, so something like Central Hall is very similar to that. So you start thinking about, okay, so we have residents on the second floor, or we put a garage down there and we put, flood vents in them. So when the storm comes in, the water comes through, like, you don't want to stop the water. The problem is well, we can stop it, right? But then that's why you hear like things like breakaway walls or flood vents or whatnot. For commercial structures, you can flood proof. Okay, so flood proofing, and this is another definition which we don't have in here, is 2 different types of flood proofing. So dry flood proofing, where you keep the waters out, and then wet flood proofing, where you allow the waters in. So they come in and they kind of flush through. So there are a lot of options like that. And so for projects we're working on, we're looking specifically at that and saying, listen, yeah, you're in the flood zone, you need to do something, and these are some of the options that are out there for it, so.
These, I believe that 1 year period also is cumulative. So that if you make that repair in year 1, now your new base number is with that
It is,
additional work.
yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're starting out at 50, you do
Yes.
40 of work, now you're 90, so your
Yes.
next edition a year later
Yeah.
is off of the new number.
right,
90.
exactly,
So that's-
because you improved it, so you are moving
yeah,
toward
you're
that.
moving in-
Right, so that's the other thing, so you may never get to being, FEMA doesn't want people in the flood zone, but we've already developed in the flood zone. So how do you protect those that live there in the flood zone while you're trying to figure out what the long-term solution is for it? So this is challenging, and again, we want to be smart about this. We want to try really look at, our job is to protect the community, and we want regulations that really do that.
And you don't want to make it so onerous
Right.
that people say,
I'm like-
I'm not gonna improve on anything.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
So if you go to 5-year look back, 10-year look back.
I mean,
Start
we're gonna get to a place
Yep.
where that's what's gonna happen, right? I mean, the other thing is that, like, changing this elevation, and then we have numbers at the top.
And we're going to talk about that too.
Squeezing-
See, you guys already got this.
So, but then one other thing that I wanna just sort of touch on here is this 50% and how that number is. Because I know that it's happened to me where people come to me and they're like, give me a number that works.
Yep.
And you're sort of, they want you to,
Start
write
with
an
numbers.
estimate in
Yep.
reverse.
Right, no, we don't
Yeah.
do that.
Do that.
So, but how
Yeah,
do we,
anymore.
how do we do that? How do we ensure that that doesn't happen?
And that's a great question.
And I didn't do it.
I'm not, I'm not a building official, right? I can tell if someone says, oh, I'm gonna put a brand new kitchen in for $4,000. I'm like, okay. But really what we do is we rely on the building department to say, when they do the breakdown, if they, and they'll call them out.
Detail.
And it has to be detailed. When you're starting to get to that 35 to 45% mark, they'll send in details and Tim will call them out. Like, no way, you gotta put realistic numbers down. Just because you wanna stay below your 50%, you need realistic numbers in there. And they'll send it back to them and they'll have to redo it. So we do, because that's really what FEMA's looking at. They wanna see, because they're gonna say, all right, so I got a building permit here. You constructed 2/3 of a new home. And you're saying that you were able to do it for 150,000? Like, they question that, and so it's, and obviously things have changed a lot, we have developed over the years, like even when federal flood insurance first came, it was to help people get back on their feet. Now, as you probably know, it's been used a lot more and, and we haven't had, we haven't had a major, say 1% chance storm in a while. Like I think Sandy was like a 25-35 year storm, if you calculated out approximately what they said. So anyway, so cumulative, substantial improvement and cumulative numbers, like whether it's right now it's 1 year. So think about whether or not it makes sense to increase that, even if it's just to go to 2 to start, or to go to 3, but think of both sides of that.
Well,
So
the thing is too, is I know what sometimes you see happen is that person will do this project and it takes 8 months to
Yep.
do it. And so then they're coming back 4 months later and, because I believe it's from permit to permit, it's
And-
not
and that's-
permit to CO.
And we need to clarify that, yep. And the building department would like us to clarify it better, so it's not just like, oh, yeah, we gave you your, you applied for your permit, but you didn't really start constructions for 6-8 months, and so it started when you get the permit. It's
Yeah,
like, no, it's when you
know that-
first started construction, so.
Sometimes it's not, 1 year isn't even like
Right, so.
a bump in the road,
I know you have a question,
I do.
Fine, start construction.
right?
So with this definition, the two actions that you're really trying to do is clarify that 1 year look back start date, define what's the start date.
Yep.
And then look at expanding the look back, right?
Essentially, yep.
Are you also going to include here in substantial improvement, that 35 to 45% gate? Or is that
Um,
gonna be somewhere else, or is that with,
It's not a
No,
definition,
okay.
it's just, we could,
Talk about language in the way you.
Right.
yeah, for
or
that.
would it be like with building instead of, yeah,
Could be that.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. It's more kind of, that's the number that we use. And even when we first sit down, some people don't have appraisals and so they're using the tax assessment because that's the only thing they have. And they're like, my house is not worth 150,000. I said, well, that's what the tax assessor says it is. So if you think it's too low, then go out and get an appraisal, and they get an appraisal and it brings it from whatever, 150 up to 200, and they have a little bit more to work with and stuff like that. But yeah, usually that's what we do when you're starting to get close to those numbers. You kind of just say, we have to have a bigger conversation, and we do. We have conversations all the time when people come, oh, I want to do this, and okay, all right, well, what's your ballpark number and stuff?
Yeah, we don't have to solve it here, but.
No,
I know
no.
that, how appraisals work into this whole thing, because, your house gets reappraised and suddenly it's way up here.
Yeah. And it's not the
And does that
property.
reset everything then?
Are you talking of town?
Town,
Towns
re-
appraisal?
yeah.
because
town-
Those things only occur.
Yeah,
every 10
10
years?
right. It doesn't matter.
Does not want to use the town's.
Right.
They're not
No.
get their own.
Oh, well, so it's
They
gonna-
want it as high as they
Right.
can, right?
Right.
Not when they're paying their taxes.
No, yeah.
So
Other
I know, so. Right, you want to do it, but you don't want to pay.
Like I got.
So
Here's my.
to-
Wait, hold on. Yep.
to that end, I'm very concerned about inequality and how this would be applied, right? I'm thinking about, I think you said that Midway Oval might be an AE zone, and didn't we say might become, right? And then BB Cove also AE zone. 1,200 square foot house in those two areas, absolutely different price.
Mhm.
The cost to lift them, probably still similar. So one person skirts it.
Yep.
The person who can afford it, probably, and someone who can't. So we're seeing worsening quality of buildings. That would be my key focus.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if there's either a different metric that we can look at to ensure that compliance where compliance is needed is happening there without cost necessarily being the barrier and then worsening inequality situations, or else provide some flexibility provisions where we can work you know,
We can't waive. So that's the thing.
We
FEMA
can't
is
waive.
very strict in terms of you hit that 50%. It doesn't matter. Because you want to protect, it doesn't matter who the person is.
yeah.
Right?
You want to
You want to
protect
protect
people.
them no matter what. Now, the other
But if it's
thing,
cost prohibitive, we're not protecting anybody.
well, and maybe cost prohibitive too, maybe that's not the project to do right off the bat. You know what I mean? Like, so there's ways to think about it. But the other piece of this too, and again, we're in a very interesting time in terms of where FEMA is right now. The town can apply for funding to help out with that, you know, in terms of helping with elevations. So there is some fund, there is no funding now because it's gone.
Right.
But in the past, there have been programs that you can work into that. This is not part of the zoning piece, but to address your question,
Right.
that's kind of,
But folks are
it's
gonna look,
outside the
they're
zone.
gonna look first at the zoning piece and they're never gonna know that
Right.
that assistance is available and they're gonna walk away from a property.
Yeah.
So it's a big concern.
Yeah, along those lines, have you seen anything like, for properties that are worth X, that's when you're with that? Properties over that?
Something more graduated, yeah.
I don't know.
Either, yeah,
And I don't know.
But that's a good solution, maybe.
maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you know, with the, yeah,
I mean, that's the conversation.
Right.
That's the issue that a number of towns have run into when they propose a 3-year with that. They get.
Or 5 years. Some did 5.
Situations and it completely blows up and
Mhm.
tap backs off. Because it really does impact certain populations more substantially.
So here's my question. So this is obviously of great interest to us all, and there's a lot of churning on it. What is our outcome for tonight that we're trying to get to?
To start this conversation is to just know there's a lot more coming. And again, we're working with Horsley Witten and we put a few things forward, but think like we're looking for what are we missing? And I still have a few other things that I want to talk before that, but like, what are we missing? You know, like how, because again, the biggest thing, and I can't say this enough, these flood protection regulations are really for protection, to protect the community. And we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to do that, you know, so no matter where they live, no matter what their income level is, you know, like, again, we decided to build in areas we shouldn't have, and we're left with that decision. But also you have to think about from the same thing too, is that the impact from a big major storm, you know, because it's gonna yes, it'll impact other people differently. And that's also why, you know, why the whole topic of flood insurance is really important, you know, and because it does, I don't know what's gonna happen, you know, in terms of we get another storm right now. They've denied a lot of claims and it is what it is. But if you have flood insurance, then that's the best way to start the build back. And I should say too, coming up over the next, this is something of interest of the same thing, because we know this is a really big topic. Our next community conversation, we haven't figured out the date yet. It's going to be either the end of July or sometime in August. We're going to do one specifically on federal flood insurance. We're going to get the state floodplain coordinator to come in there. We're going to have breakout sessions to show you where you are in the floodplain. We're still creating it right now because this is something that most people forget about and don't even think about on a day-to-day, yet we're a vulnerable community, you know, and we have to think really proactively of again, to protect the community, so.
I'll save the rest of my questions for that community
All
conversation.
right, good.
When someone rebuilds and then they're at this new elevation, I mean, well, I guess. You know,
So you might be getting to the building height question.
Yeah.
Because this is another big question. So if you remember, with the Mouse Island, right, we had a diagram there that showed that if and when they rebuild, whether it's substantial improvement or substantial damage or whatever it is, it's going to be that height, that 30 feet is going to be measured at BFE +1. What we have been asking Horsley Witten to do is, this could be a big change for places like downtown Mystic or whatnot that may have to rebuild. So what does this look like? So we're looking at right now, design guidelines, some mock-ups of what a elevated house would look like under the current, what downtown Mystic or wherever it looks like right now. And it's not just planning and zoning.
Right.
It's also historic district commission, because the FEMA regs, again, they want you to protect the property. And that means that, okay, you can still have a historic structure. There are ways to do it. There's some great examples of, what they've done in Newport and Charleston, South Carolina, and Annapolis. But those are the kind of things that we need when we're thinking of these kind of downtown communities that have historic structures.
Okay, so is historic structure defined anywhere, or are we going
Yes.
based off of like National Historic Register?
I think it's basically it is defined as under the national, it is defined in our regs right now.
Okay,
And basically we are under the natural, the National Register, we have a whole list of structures that are in there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you were referring to the Mystic Historic.
Yeah.
Right, the
Right.
Historic District Commission.
Commission, right, yeah,
like
we're not talking about,
aesthetically,
it's,
but
they
like,
kind of
yeah.
separate.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you allow them to go up to 50 feet or 60
they
feet,
say no,
then
they
say it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
So,
and
You need to have that conversation with them, that get them to understand, I mean.
Dave, are you
people see the
aware
value.
of these programs that provide money to do the elevator?
I am, yeah.
Because that's where a place like Midway Oval would
Yes.
benefit, where something else might not,
Yeah.
right? And the other thing I would just like throw out there is that, if you were to like exempt, which you can't, do, a certain area of town, you're kind of doing that person a disservice.
Yeah.
Because the next
Right.
storm
Right.
is
Absolutely.
gonna come and they're gonna be, they're just gonna, I mean, really have, we gotta figure out a way to get this thing built correctly.
And those houses over there too were disposed to on the damage, for them being structures that weren't necessarily.
Yeah, it was
intended to
temporary.
be permanent.
Right,
structures.
they're just
So-
all posts.
Exactly.
you got, you're either losing your house to a storm or you're losing it to someone who can afford to fix it.
Yeah.
That's the choice you're
I
getting
mean,
faced.
some of those houses, I mean, originally they were built on wood piles.
Yeah.
And they weren't even buried, those piles were a foot deep.
So there is some challenges and stuff. I don't, again, these are kind of bigger, longer term things in terms of elevation and stuff, but yes, there are programs that are out there. They're just not existing right now.
Question about this definition of substantial improvement. How much of this is actually controlled by like FEMA regs that we can't get away from at all? And specifically, again, thinking about that historic structure exemption, is that something that we can decide to tighten up on, or is that something that's FEMA kind
They're
of?
FEMA, right? I mean, they're specifically for that.
For it, yeah.
So it's, these are coming down specifically from.
So we can't get looser, but we can get tighter.
Yes, exactly.
Introduction.
Okay.
Are you-
Yeah, I have another-
You got four?
Wouldn't come and say, here's some regular.
Right. We wanted you to think about this and
You're touching on all the highlighted things.
I am, I have a
Yeah.
couple, other little big things. So one is the design height, which we talked about. This one, we have talked about EV chargers in the flood zone,
Do you
so.
have a solution?
No, we don't have a solution yet, but yeah, that's one. And then the last one is, one of the issues is section 5 in the fill regulations, prohibit fill in the VE zone. And for a number of reasons, when those came in there, and we need to duplicate that in the FEMA flood, it's on FEMA, in the flood protection regulations, because people miss it. It's over there and we say, no, it's here. It says you can't fill in the VE zone.
Sand too.
There, yeah, those sand's in there too. Sand dunes are in there because there's also, like Mumford Cove, there is natural dunes. And then there are unnatural dunes that are built by using snow fencing and whatnot. So we just want to be consistent in the fact that a dune system isn't just like a naturally occurring system. Sometimes it's partially man-made.
Oh, okay.
So,
That'd be very interesting.
yeah.
All those berms they made over there.
What are we thinking with the EV? Is that what we had talked about?
I know.
Because I was thinking about this,
Just the flood EV you're talking.
yeah.
So
ta-
I have a
talked to an
question,
Electrician friend, and he just says, why isn't everything GFI protected?
right?
I mean, it gets wet, it shuts
Yeah.
off.
I was talking to my husband, who's also an electrician, and he installs EV chargers for folks' homes. And he said pretty much it's GFI protected typically. And it's elevated if it's not. So the car itself, it's,
Well, we're not insuring.
I know.
we're not insuring cars, but you know what? Are we also Right, so my question here is, are we trying to control for individual personal use of EV chargers in the home? Are we controlling for commercial uses and municipal?
In a parking lot, because it came up.
Yeah.
Right,
when we were
okay.
talking about this.
Chargers, and I guess.
So like apartment buildings, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mystic, Art Association.
Right,
I mean,
And-
the
and
one
those kinds
that's
of
out here
locations.
is retractable, right? So you have. You know what I mean?
so if your car is
It's
connected,
One of those.
I
You have
mean,
something that.
we don't do
Okay.
anything to make sure that cars don't get washed away, right?
While you're plugged in, it's not retracting.
EV is dead. So anyways, that's what I got.
New batteries.
My husband,
I,
EV, but he said that a battery exploding in an EV car is
Oh, we move
way more
on.
dangerous than a car firing.
Yeah.
And then, oh, Jeff, that was good.
What was that?
Jeff said, now that we've been flooded with information.
Let's raise it to a higher level.
Oh. All right, we're gonna.
So, you know,
Let's see.
but, okay, so you just give us just maybe 30 seconds on where we're moving to and kind of the timing on this?
So this is the same it's within the same contract as we had the mouse side, so. So they are actively working on language that we have been reviewing. So maybe in August, you may see the very first draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
Is that good?
Yeah, because also we can find a little bit of our knowledge and our research, which came out tonight,
Yeah,
to basically be ready for August, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's great. Good. Thanks. All right. Now, ready to go to the next thing? Sure. Yeah, referrals, right? We have the town of Stonington, Lattimore Point.
right. So this is a text amendment to allow the creation of a master plan, which is something that Stonington likes to do for various areas that need special consideration. You guys are aware of where Lattimore Point is. Okay. You know, it's a condominium association that was established well before zoning, and zoning doesn't, existing zoning doesn't work for them, and so, yeah. So I don't believe it has any impact on the town of Groton.
No, but it seems like a major change.
Why would this
Potentially.
even refer to us?
Yeah.
Because it's not within the,
Cause they're
Far
good
away.
neighbors.
well, because it's not within the
You
boundary.
know,
of-
It's
distance.
that section that of their regulations, and there are other areas in town that fall under that section, so that's,
Oh, I thought it was just,
no, it's within the master plan or.
Oh,
So the same thing it does this.
oh, I see.
Or exactly, yeah,
Mm.
I
exactly.
thought it was just.
The same
whatever.
section, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So nobody has any concerns or anything to register? Okay. So next, let's see, report of the chair. Keep it short here. Major thing I did, I tried to put all the, this is from the 2016 P O C D. Which of the goals were accomplished, which weren't, and this is per Horsley Witten, grading each one.
Yeah.
And so I said, I didn't like the way it was by tabs and stuff like that. It's very hard for me to analyze, like to be able to move around. So I started messing around with this at home. And then anyway, so I kind of gave up when I lost a few columns. So.
We're gonna try to make it more user friendly
So-
before putting it up online.
Yeah, so it's not on the town website yet, but what it is, you'll have the ability to look at everything in case you want to compare some of the topics and stuff. So, but I think this is, to me, I think this is really interesting to know. At least what was probably what was accomplished, what wasn't yet, and you ask yourself, why not, and should we change this, maybe it's good goals? Should we change the way they have to accomplish it, or what's not working there? The ones that don't work, so.
So our administrator for Greater Groton is on vacation right now, and so we're just gonna send what we sent to Sue to you guys. Okay, but just keep aware of the reformatted.
Yeah, and if you have any better ideas on how you'd like to see it too, please, that would be the time.
I think that you guys should provide data sets to us so that we can actually do analysis.
Yourself.
Which actually.
I think it's probably there to it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
We love data. Engineers love data.
So does anybody have anything else to report?
Just one minor thing, I went to the Wooden Tap soft opening today. It's a lovely place. Huge. Get in there, it is big. But good food, reasonable prices, recommend. What?
On the site.
Site look good.
Do the inspection, make sure.
I checked, counted the number of EV chargers. that are there, you know.
Trees and lighting.
But
New sidewalk
it's, it's-
connected that.
they did a
walk
nice
side
job.
that's there, yeah.
Lot of money. Lot of money they put into that place.
Oh, yeah.
If I could just report on one too, so I just introduced HB, the Connecticut Bill 5002. And if you don't know, it got vetoed yesterday.
Yes.
At least a day ago, got vetoed. And it was just kind of an all encompassing bill, in my opinion, that they lumped together. And all my friends from Greenwich were calling saying, why aren't you guys waiting? The answer is, it's not a bill. What do we, it doesn't appear right, but I don't know.
I wrote to the governor. I wrote to the governor.
Okay,
There was a,
they were like,
You know,
more
when it-
vocal.
online.
Zone, that was the point here. Yeah, I'd rather leave that to John Reiner and staff.
Well, I said, two little things. One is, I don't know if people have heard that the town council, this is a thing dear to my heart, actually, has unanimously approved having the state look into putting a series of roundabouts at the lines. And I was thrilled to hear it since I had already written to them suggesting that, but I don't know if they use it. I don't think it even came into play.
They listened.
Maybe, I think so.
Well, I think they need roundabout driving training.
Everybody-
Every time I go to the ones.
Well, actually, that's a great example
Yeah.
of, we talked about Salem Four Corners one, which cut down in the first year and a half, so everybody's still new at it. It cut down, I checked up on this, it cut down the accidents by 50% and injuries by 90%.
Oh, I like
And
that.
that is a nationwide common number. So
Interesting.
no matter what,
But,
they work great.
but we now all feel like Cape Codders, so I'm not sure whether that's good or not.
Those are rotaries. It'll be a series of,
That's like,
either a series of three,
To me, this.
or maybe,
Yes,
so-
yes.
well, the terminology between a rotary and a roundabout is really foggy. So
Okay,
it's supposed to be
David,
different. The Civil Corps of Engineers defined a roundabout. But people still kept calling it a rotary, so.
Yeah,
the
but
ter-
they're
the ter-
bigger in mass, they're bigger.
Not necessarily. A traffic circle is bigger.
But they go,
Traffic circle could be any size. Roundabout just replaces a traffic light in an intersection.
Yeah.
That's all. And the other one came up at my local HOA meeting for High Meadow Lane, but I have a feeling it's going to come out the same. Somewhere in our neighborhood, the Pequot Woods actually comes up to a 200-foot section. And we just found out that I was going to start complaining about how poorly they started to take care of the grass in front of it. It's been an ongoing thing. And then I found out that the neighbor on the other side has been mowing that area because they haven't been taking care of it. Occasionally, it looks like they report that take care of it because I took care of it. And so what's been happening is that one at a time, people have been just giving up and taking care of it and going with a weed whacker where we're not supposed to go. And so I think we need to give some thought or move it forward, that we're done a great job of acquiring all this open space without the ability to take care of it.
Absolutely. So.
I know, exactly.
I imagine.
That's what he says all the time.
Okay,
So-
so supportive on that.
Maybe a commission, a new commission.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so there was a public hearing a couple weeks ago for the Pleasant Valley Elementary School. There's a development being proposed there. They scheduled a new public hearing because of a signage issue. They didn't put the public notice sign up, so they rescheduled it. That's going to be on Tuesday of next week, July 1st. Sorry, yes, July 1st,
Right.
7 o'clock. And then they said the developer will be there. Or sorry, 6:30 is when the town council meeting starts. They said the developer will be there at 5:30 to give kind of just open house, right? He'll have posters up and we'll answer questions informally before folks, informally. So that'll be happening in the same room at 5:30, and then 6:30, the council meeting will start and they'll have their public hearing.
Yeah, it's pretty well advertised, it's happy to see, so, yeah. That's
Yeah,
good.
I,
Thanks for
my
that.
one complaint on it is the sign is very far back from the
Mhm.
road. It's of course regulation size, but it's pretty far back and I've had multiple people mention that and myself, I noticed, I was like, wow, you can't even read it from the road. But, it is on the property now.
Yep, thanks for bringing that up. Now staff?
The only thing we have is, next Monday, the 30th, special meeting, 5:30.
Right.
We're gonna talk P O C D. We will get the agenda packet out to you probably Thursday morning. There'll be a lot of attachments. And also at that meeting, as a separate project that Horsley Wooden is doing, we'll be talking about how we can increase public input, public communication, between yourselves and the general public. Outside of public hearings and outside of application review.
Great, okay.
So we'll have some sort of snack. Super thing. Okay.
Okay, then, the ASP report. Comments on that, or?
No, it didn't. It'll be on the next one. Yeah,
Application
right. It's just, that's where we are, status of applications.
and motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Ever been to a wooden town?
No,